Alright everybody, let's go over context in writing for your Odyssey and Locke paper. First, what is context? Well, just like everything else in writing, your context is based a lot on who your audience is. For this paper, you can assume that the audience for your paper, the readers, are smart but uninformed people. Therefore, your reader doesn't know much about the Odyssey or about Locke's argument about when to revolt. Therefore, you need to give context to build your reader's schema. So the definition of context is background information that will help the reader understand the information and the argument presented in your paper. Well, where does the context go? Well, you should know this. We talked about in class CE, CA. And there it is. In that, the first C is your context. You'll notice the context comes before your evidence because it's leading into your evidence. So how should you build your context? How do you decide what goes in there? Well, any of these might go into your context. For example, an overview of your story. Your reader probably needs to know who Odysseus is and why he is taking this voyage in the first place. Your reader also might need an explanation of key characters, and you can do this very quickly and very shortly with epithets, things like saying Circe, a goddess, or Eurylochus, a crew member, so it doesn't take a lot of explanation to clarify who a character is. Your reader will also probably need a summary of events that have led up to your evidence, but be careful. You want to pick and choose only what is essential to understanding your particular evidence. How do you know how much context to put? Well, you can tell that you probably had not enough context if you read your paper to somebody who didn't know the Odyssey and they said, "Wait, what?" and looked at you with confusion. They probably needed a little bit more context. But if you go on and summarize everything and tell everything that's happened before you even get to your evidence, your audience is going to start to look at you like this and say, "Ugh, get to the point." And that's probably too much context. Can you show an example? Of course I can. I'm your teacher. That's all I do. Here's an example that we looked at in class. You'll notice that the context is highlighted in orange. And so again, it's giving a very brief summary of what the scene is and who the characters are. It says, in one scene, half of the crew are transformed into pigs when they stumble unwittingly into Circe's palace. That's setting up the situation. Then it says, the only person to escape, Eurylochus, relays the news to Odysseus, urging him to flee. That's introducing this character because Eurylochus is such a contrast to Odysseus' loyalty in this scene. And then it goes into the evidence. Context requirements for this paper. You have to have context, and it shows up on your rubric. In body paragraph 1, where you talk about the conditions on the voyage, you should have 2 to 3 sentences to contextualize the story of the Odyssey. Who was Odysseus? Why was he traveling? Who were his men? What was the goal? And then you also need, for each of your quotes, 1 to 2 sentences to set that up. That means in your first body paragraph, you will have anywhere from 4 to 7 sentences of context. In body paragraph 2, you should have 2 pieces of evidence to show whether Odysseus was responsible for the things that went wrong. So therefore, you should have anywhere from 3 to 6 sentences of context for that paragraph. In body paragraph 3, you need to explain if the crew should have revolted or not based on Locke. Your reader doesn't necessarily know who Locke is, so you need 2 to 3 sentences to explain who he is and what his views are when people have the right to revolt against a leader. And that's 2 to 3 sentences of context for this paragraph. Again, don't go overboard with context, but make sure that you explain to your reader what he or she needs to know in order to understand the evidence that you're using. That's it. Good luck. Go rock your context.